بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, yesterday morning we discussed the kafara and how the companions radiyallahu anhum dealt with that. Two important points before we move on from that. Number one, the kafara becomes obligatory once the sun rises on the day, or once the break of dawn on the day that a person is supposed to fast. So the night before, it is not obligatory. It becomes obligatory once the person experiences the break of dawn of the day of Ramadan. Then the person will do the kafara, not before. Second of all, a good question that was asked was, do we do the kafara each day as we miss that day, or can we do it all together at the end of the month? And the answer is either is correct. Here we have the narration of Anas radiyallahu anhu, that he did it at the end. At the end of Ramadan, he gathered 30 poor people and he fed them all a meal of tharid, right? How do you know that the month is going to be 30 days? Well, you wouldn't know until the month is over. And so, if it is 30 days or 29 days, or if the person misses 10 or 15 days, if the person were to hypothetically pass away during Ramadan, the kafara would only be for whatever had passed of the days that he experienced up until his death. So every act of worship has pillars. Every act of worship has conditions. Every act of worship has obligations. We've discussed these things before. Every act of worship has conditions, pillars, and obligations. Every act of worship. So for instance, what is the greatest act of worship a person can do? La ilaha illallah, right? So la ilaha illallah, does it have conditions? Yes. How many conditions does it have? Who knows? 2? No. 1? No. 7 conditions to la ilaha illallah. 7 conditions, meaning these 7 things have to be all together, simultaneous, in order for la ilaha illallah to be accepted from a person. Is that not frightening? If you hear that, a little tinge should go up your spine. Because if you've never heard of this, how do you know that you've fulfilled all 7 conditions? What are those 7 conditions? La ilaha illallah will not be accepted from a person who fulfills 6 conditions. It has to be all 7 at the same time. So la ilaha illallah has 7 conditions. And la ilaha illallah has how many pillars? 2. 2 pillars to la ilaha illallah. And how many obligations to la ilaha illallah? Many. All of the obligations of Islam fall into the generalities of that. But there are 7 conditions to la ilaha illallah and 2 pillars. Salah. How many conditions for salah? This one I won't give you a pass because I talked about this before. 14, غلط. أحسنت على الخطأ. 9 conditions. 9 conditions. How many pillars of salah? Faisal, go ahead. This is your time to shine. 14. 14 pillars. And how many obligations of salah? One more. Eight obligations for salah, etc., right? Fasting has conditions, it has pillars, it has obligations. What is a condition? What is a pillar? We've mentioned this so many times, but it warrants repeating. Conditions and pillars are the same thing. They're the same thing. However, conditions are outside of the act of worship itself. Pillars are actually part of the act of worship itself. So, for instance, a condition would be the time for salah. The time for salah has to be in. That's one of the conditions. But it's not actually part of the prayer. A pillar, like ruku'. Ruku' is a pillar. It's actually part of the act of worship, right? So conditions and pillars, they are the same thing in the sense that if any of them are missing, the act of worship is invalid. Whether a person forgets it or doesn't, it's invalid. Obligation is the same as pillars and conditions, only there is some wiggle room for a person who forgets. If you forget an obligation, it doesn't invalidate the act of worship. So an obligation, if you leave it off on purpose, the act of worship is invalid. But if you forget it, the act of worship is still valid, right? Like, for instance, saying Subhana Rabbi al-Azim in ruku'. If a person were to forget it, or to say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la in its place, and then stand for, or for instance, the first tashahhud. Stand up and forget the first tashahhud. This is an obligation, which means that once you complete the salah, you can make sujood as-sahu, and it will make up for it. But if a person says, well, I'm kind of strapped for time and let me not make the first tashahhud, the salah is invalid. We understand? Okay, so conditions, like for instance, to simplify it, we could say wudu is a condition. Wudu is actually not a condition. It's broader than wudu, okay? But to simplify, let's say wudu is a condition of salah. If I forgot to make wudu and I prayed, would my prayer be valid? No. And I remembered later, do I have to make it up? Yes. Even if I remember after 10 years, I have to make that prayer up again, because it is a condition. And if you forget a condition, it still invalidates the act of worship. Okay, ruku' is a pillar. If I forget to make ruku', is my salah valid? If I forget to make ruku', is my salah valid? No. No, it's not. How could it be? It's a pillar, right? It's a pillar. My salah is not valid, or at least that rak'ah is not valid. The entire rak'ah is invalid. I have to make that one rak'ah up. Now, saying Subhana Rabbi al-Azim in ruku', that's an obligation. If I were to forget it, is my salah still valid? The first tashahhud of a salah that has two tashahhud, if I forget the first one, is my salah still valid? Yes. If I leave it off on purpose, is my salah still valid? No. Do we understand now? Conditions, pillars, obligations. Conditions, pillars, obligations. So now with, and I kind of feel a little bit bad, because the conditions of La ilaha illallah, we said, are how many? 7. And we said the pillars of La ilaha illallah are how many? 2. And we said the obligations of La ilaha illallah are many. And I feel a little bad because I'm supposed to be teaching that, and I have not taught you that yet. So we haven't discussed that yet. You might get a little tiny pass for that. However, we will, insha'Allah ta'ala, discuss this after Ramadan. Big plans for after Ramadan, right, President? So, for fasting, it has conditions. It has pillars, it has obligations. Fasting has two conditions. Two conditions. The first condition is, fasting has conditions. We mentioned those conditions in the previous chapters, right? Al-Muslim, al-Baligh, al-Aqil, al-Muqim, al-Sahih, right? Five conditions, right, that a person, to make fasting obligatory upon a person. And we mentioned for the female is an additional that she is, two, that she is free of menstruation or postpartum bleeding. Those are the conditions. We discussed all that. Pillars of fasting are two. Two pillars to fasting, two. Number one, intention. Number two, refraining from anything that breaks your fast. That's it. So you'll come to realize that a lot of times we already do that. We just haven't categorized them in our minds yet, right? But we all already do that. We have the intention, but when we put a name and a categorization to each of these rulings, now we are worshiping Allah upon knowledge. Right? Now I can be sure that I have met the criteria. Now when I have something happen, I can pretty much understand what needs to be done. Whether I need to make the day up, or whether I need to continue fasting, or this is why we learn these things. Conditions, obligations, pillars, right? Fasting has two pillars. Fasting has two pillars. Number one, intention. Number two, refraining from anything that breaks a person's fast. Pretty simple. Intention. For an obligatory fast, Ramadan or any other fast that's obligatory, you have to have the intention before the break of dawn. You have to have the intention before the break of dawn. Even if it is a conditional intention. What is a conditional intention? Let's say I got to wake up and go to work at whatever, right? And so I go to sleep before it's confirmed that tomorrow is Ramadan. But tomorrow might be Ramadan. So I go to sleep with the intention that if tomorrow is Ramadan, I'm fasting. Right? This is valid. This is correct. But a person must have the intention to fast before the break of dawn. The question now is, does a person have to make that intention consciously every day? That's better. But if a person just has a general intention that I'm going to fast Ramadan this year, and then proceeds to do so, that's enough. That's what's needed. So having a general intention for the entirety of the month is enough. But if a person were to have the individual intention every single morning before the break of dawn, that's better and that's more complete, right? Now, intention is not something that you have to speak. Intentions are beyond words. You don't have to stand and make a declaration of your intention to fast. I hereby intend to fast today from the break of dawn until the sun sets. And I'm going to fast for the sake of Allah. And I'm going to... This is unnecessary. The Prophet never did this, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His companions never did this. If I came on anybody while they were eating suhoor and I said, what are you planning to do? Say, well, obviously I'm eating suhoor because, I'm going to fast. Most people don't wake up before the break of dawn to eat breakfast. Right? That's not a normal thing. That comes with intentionality. So the person has the intention to fast already. The intention is already there. A person sets his alarm to wake up for suhoor. They've already had the intention to fast. That's exactly what the intention is. And that goes for all acts of worship, salah included. When I was a child, the way the elders taught us to pray was that when you stand to make salah, you have to stand and face the qibla. And then you say, نويت أن أصلي 4 ركعات متجه القبلة والبيت وراء هذا الإمام 4 ركعات فريضة الظهر مش عارف إيش blah blah blah. I intend to pray behind this imam facing the qibla 4 rak'ah for dhuhr with the intention of it being up. The only thing left is to add the address and zip code and phone number, email address. This is unnecessary. As soon as a person puts his shoes on to go to the masjid, he already has the intention to pray. Another good question is, what if I stand and as I'm making my declaration of prayer, of intention to pray, instead of saying dhuhr, I say asr by accident. I start praying. And it's dhuhr time. Is my prayer invalid? So my tongue said something that my intention didn't intend. Therefore, which one? That means what you say has nothing to do with your intentions. An intention is never declared. Even in Hajj and Umrah. You know, in Hajj and Umrah, when we go for Hajj or Umrah, the Prophet ﷺ teaches us we are to say, لبيك اللهم حجا, لبيك اللهم عمرة, لبيك اللهم حج وعمرة. Right? This is not a proclamation of intention. This is a proclamation of the start of your journey of Hajj or Umrah. Just like when I stand to make salah, I begin with Allahu Akbar. This is my initiating takbir. For Hajj, for Umrah, it is the same thing. When I make that declaration, Labbaik Allahumma Hajjan, Labbaik Allahumma Umrah, Labbaik Allahumma Hajjan wa Umrah, this is not a declaration of intention. This is a declaration of starting. Right? Because the intention for Hajj or Umrah isn't made at that moment, is it? The intention for Hajj and Umrah is usually made months in advance, maybe even years in advance. As soon as you start shopping for Hajj packages, you've already made the intention to make Hajj. As soon as you begin buying things for your journey, you've already had the intention to make Hajj. Right? Months before you even begin your journey to Hajj. So there's no instance where we make a declaration of our intention. And I'll give you an additional nugget here. All 4 imams of the 4 madhab, all 4 of them, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmad, rahimahumullah, along with Abu Hanifa's 4 other companions that make up his madhab. Remember, we mentioned the Hanafi madhab is founded by Al-Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, but it was solidified and built by him and 4 other of his students, right? So all 4 of these imams, along with their prominent students, none of them have ever even mentioned that it is preferable for a person to ever proclaim his intention. None of them. Now, the later students and scholars of these madhahib, they mention these things in their books. So like after the 4th century, some of the fuqaha of the Hanafi madhab, of the Shafi'i madhab, they started to posit that, well, it's preferred that a person, say his intention because the tongue, helps to quantify the intention, etc., etc. But this never came from the 4 imams themselves, rahimahumullah, nor any of their known works. This came from scholars that came way later that were ascribed to their madhahib. So none of the companions, none of the 4 imams of the madahib, or the 7 fuqaha before them, which the 4 madahib are comprised of, nor even the Zahiri madhab, which is a 5th madhab, nor the madhab of Ahl al-Hadith in the earlier centuries of Islam, had they ever even preferred that a person say his intention. Intentions are in the heart, right? Intentions are in the heart. And some of the scholars have said, if Allah had commanded us to do anything without an intention, He would have commanded us to do something physically impossible for us. It's impossible. It's impossible to do something without an intention, right? And as far as acts of worship go. And this is what differentiates sane from insane. Remember, we mentioned what is meant by insanity and what is meant by sanity in the terminology, in the language of the fuqaha. It is the ability to hold a coherent intention. This is what differentiates the sane from the insane, correct? Therefore, the first pillar of fasting is what? The first pillar of fasting? Intention. The second pillar of fasting? Refraining from anything that breaks your fast. And tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala, we will discuss the 6 things that break a person's fast. 6 things. Anything outside of these 6 things, it will not break your fast. Sheikh, I got a lidocaine injection because I went to the dentist. Does it break my fast? No. Sheikh, my arm got cut off and I was bleeding. Does it break my fast? No. Sheikh, I use a suppository. Does that break my fast? No. Sheikh, I got cupping or blood drawn, or I got insulin shots. Does that break my fast? No. These 6 things, we will discuss them tomorrow. Anything outside of these 6 things does not break your fast, inshallah ta'ala. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى بمنه وكرمه وجوده أن يعلمنا ما ينفعنا وأن ينفعنا بما علمنا وأن يزيدنا علما وأن يفقهنا في ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد